It's that time of year again. We're entering the final stretch of the regular season, looking ahead to the postseason, and most importantly for right now, the trade deadline is looming. As always, the Leafs have some areas which could do with improvement if they want to be a cup contender this year, but they also have financial constraints to handle. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs make a big splash this trade deadline, or will Brad Treliving make more minor adjustments to prepare his team ahead of this year's playoffs? Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Victoria and I talk everything hockey and the Toronto Maple Leafs from across the pond in Scotland. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it and also subscribe to my channel. Today we're breaking down some potential Leafs trade targets, predictions ahead of the trade deadline, and what I think the Leafs may or may not do in this year's trade deadline on March the 7th. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, just keep watching. The Leafs' priority this trade deadline is definitely to acquire depth down the middle by acquiring a centre. In the pre-season, the Leafs trialled William Nylander at centre, but this ended as quickly as it began, and it clearly wasn't a fit. All season long, Toronto have been weakened by their need for a third-line centre to add depth behind Matthews and Tavares. They've used Max Domi and Fraser Minton in this role previously, but if they want to go on a cup run this year, they'll need to add a centre who can add that depth in the middle that's needed in a playoff scenario. According to Elliot Friedman, a potential trade for the Leafs could be Brayden Schenn of the St. Louis Blues. In 60 games this season, 33-year-old Schenn has 12 goals and 24 assists. He could add some much-needed experience to the Leafs' bottom six, but he isn't by any means an easy solution. He has a full no-trade clause, meaning that ultimately he gets to decide where he wants to go. And with teams like Vegas also interested, the Leafs have tough competition, and that's if St. Louis actually decide to trade him in the first place. He's also not cheap, and he has a hefty price tag with 3 more years contract on a $6.5 million cap hit. Trading for Schenn could clearly come with a cost for the Leafs. This could look like a package including an attractive draft pick, perhaps the first round in 2026, as well as one of their top prospects from Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton or Ben Danford. This high cost could really pay off if the Leafs get Schenn and they go on a cup run this year, but sacrificing picks and prospects would mean going all in, emptying the Leafs cupboards and leaving very little for future building blocks as this current Leafs team gets older. It's essentially the trade-off between they could make the team really good right now in the short term, but a few years from now, the Leafs could be a weaker team who are out of playoff contention once again. So it essentially boils down to whether the Leafs are going to go fully all in because they need to win a cup right now, or they're making sure that their future still has some backup plans. Another potential trade target at centre is Scott Laughton of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's only signed through the 25-26 season with a $3 million annual cap hit. He's from the Toronto area, he could add some depth in the bottom six, while also racking up some points and adding value to the Leafs special teams. However, while he is clearly less expensive than Schenn, he also doesn't bring quite the same value. It's likely that for Laughton, the Leafs would need to give up a first-round draft pick or an equally valuable prospect. Laughton himself has also played into these trade rumours. He posted a photo on social media last Friday night, recreating The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci with his teammates and the team staff at a dinner in Winnipeg, which I love when players have fun with the trade deadline, it's the best. Other less blockbuster style centre acquisitions for the Leafs could include Trent Frederick of the Boston Bruins, Yanni Gourde of the Seattle Kraken, or Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. I would love to break all of these down individually, but honestly, I could talk about potential trade targets for so long that the trade deadline would be over by the time I got this video up. The second priority for the Leafs this trade deadline is adding on defence, and I think this is heavily reliant on what they'll get in terms of a centre and what is left over in terms of money. The Leafs aren't lacking in defence like in previous years. I feel like I've made videos like this for like a couple years now, and every time I'm like, they need defence, they need defensemen. Not this year. They've actually, they're pretty decent on defence. I think Chris Tanev was a significant addition, and thankfully that shoulder arm injury that he's got doesn't doesn't seem to be too serious. So overall, the Leafs don't have defence concerns, I would say. However, I think they could still look to add in this area if it is possible. And potentially, if somehow they have the money, another St. Louis addition that could come to Toronto is Colton Parayko. His name, I just always feel like I'm saying it wrong. The 31-year-old right-handed defenseman could bring size on the back while also still being able to help out on offense too. I think he could be a great addition for the Leafs, but he does have a hefty price tag. He's signed all the way to 2030 with a $6.5 million AAV, and in my opinion, that's way too much to spend on a defenseman when you're not lacking in defense. Of course, he does bring some offense as well, but ultimately it's a centre they need, and I can't see them, even if they free up enough space to get a centre, I can't see them having enough left over to add Colton Parayko to the roster. So another option that the Leafs could go for, and one which I think is more viable, is to have a full brother reunion and add Luke Schenn from the Nashville Predators to the team. He has of course played for the Leafs before. He knows the score, he knows what it's like to play for the organisation, to play for the fans, and the 33-year-old could make a great pairing with somebody like Morgan Rielly. He is also a lot cheaper too, he's far more affordable. He's only signed for one more season with a $2.75 million cap hit for the year. He could be great on the penalty kill, he could really bolster defence, and he doesn't come at too great of a cost. So if the Leafs somehow do get Brayden Schenn, I would love it in an ideal world if they had the money to be able to bring Luke Schenn in as well and have the brothers reunited. I think that would be really good for the team. And ultimately, the Schenn brothers really add to both areas that the Leafs need improvement in. The Schenn brothers could be the solution to all of the Leafs' problems. Other potential trade targets for defence could include David Savard of the Montreal Canadiens, Jamie Alexiak of the Seattle Kraken, or Connor Murphy from the Chicago Blackhawks. But of course, in order for the Leafs to do literally any of this, they have to make some moves themselves and free up some cap space. So to finish up on this video, let's just touch on what the Leafs could do in terms of their own moves, just to free up enough money that they can actually make changes to their team. So with Calle Jarnkrok back in the lineup, the Leafs currently only have $101,562 left in cap space, with their projected cap hit going well into the minuses. They'll need to make room if they're going to do anything this trade deadline, and especially if they want to sign a bigger player with a bigger price tag. James Myrtle of The Athletic published a really great article yesterday about how the Maple Leafs can get what they need this trade deadline, like how they can actually make it viable, and I really like the way that he kind of mapped it out, I guess. So he discusses first waiving or trading Connor Dewar. Connor Dewar has only played 29 games this year. He only has an average ice time of 10 minutes per game, so he's not really contributing much to the team at the moment. He has a $1.18 million contract, which, if they could get rid of this, would go some way into freeing up enough cap space to sign someone else, of course. If they traded him, they could free up the whole $1.18 million, or you can bury most of it in the minors and get rid of $1.15 million of his contract if you were to waive him and he goes down into the minors, of course. So either way, you are getting rid of a substantial part of his contract, and this could be a start for the Leafs freeing up much needed cap space. Myrtle then goes on to discuss trading Nick Robertson. While Nick Robertson has definitely been better lately, he's had some goals, he's been productive for the team. If you remember, before the season started, Nick Robertson actually wanted a trade. And it definitely seems like relations have improved with him, but ultimately, if the Leafs want to make some big changes to this team, they are going to have to offload some players who are being productive. They won't be able to make enough space by getting rid of just players like Connor Dewar. They'll have to make more substantial moves than that. So if the Leafs were able to trade Dewar and Robertson, this would free up $2.9 million in cap space, which is a great start. The article then goes on to discuss waiving Ryan Reeves, which, if you combine this with Robertson and Dewar, it would create $4.05 million in cap space. Then finally, you trade another player. Perhaps Max Domi? Or maybe David Kampf? And making this one final trade would free up enough room. They could either make a splash by signing one heavily price tagged guy, or they could just make perhaps more smaller but multiple adjustments maybe they sign one of the Shen brothers and then they make some other additions, and basically they could round out exactly what they needed from the cap space made if they made these moves. So there is potentially what the Leafs trade deadline could look like this week, or it could look nothing like this. Honestly, you can never predict it. Brad Treliving's really playing it cool, and he's sort of giving the vibe that they're maybe not going to be doing anything too major, but they really do need depth at centre. It's really been like their weakness this season, especially given that Austin Matthews has not been on good form lately, which that's a whole other video in itself. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you want the Leafs to get at the trade deadline, and what do you think they'll actually do? I love the trade deadline, and I will, as I do every year, I film a video as soon as the trade deadline is done at night, and I get it up on the same night, so that will definitely be coming, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully the Leafs give me something to talk about. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll be back soon with more hockey chats from across the pond. Bye guys. What you want, I'ma give it to you. Yeah, promise, I'ma give it to you.
Miss that smile, Lord knows I ain't seen that in a while, but it's your style, so something must be up keeping you down. You a queen that must be heaven sent. Pray my soul, I must repent for not telling you what I meant and how I felt. Honestly, I'm used to throwing wishes in the